Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a moment in early Islamic history that is, honestly, just incredibly intense. It's a high-stakes, face-to-face confrontation. If you want to dive deeper into the historical context behind the Quran, be sure to hit subscribe to Islamic Guidance Hub.
So, think about this. What happens when a message of profound divine mercy is met with the bitter, incredibly public curse right from your own flesh and blood? Well, that's exactly the emotional reality at the core of Surah Al-Masad. It's a chapter of the Quran that doesn't just speak in generalities. It directly names and completely condemns one very specific, very powerful individual.
Part 1. The Pride of Mecca.
Okay, to really grasp how this clash went down, we need to step back into the fiercely tribal world of 7th century Mecca. The man at the absolute center of our explainer today is Abd al-Uzza bin Abd al-Muttalib. Now, he was a seriously wealthy chieftain of the Banu Hashim clan, but crucially, and this is what makes it so painful, he was the paternal half-uncle of the Prophet Muhammad Sas. People knew him as Abu Lahab, meaning father of flame, and he got that nickname because of his reddish complexion and, well, a notoriously fiery temper. His opposition wasn't just political, it cut deep because of that close blood tie.
You know, when you look at another infamous opponent, Abu Jahl, his pushback was highly political. He was all about protecting the supremacy of his clan, the Banu Makhzum. But Abu Lahab, his motivations were completely different. They were deeply, deeply personal. He was driven by this immense familial pride, feeling like the traditions of his ancestors were under attack. Plus, and this is a big one, as a custodian of the Kaaba, he was terrified that this new monotheistic message would just totally bankrupt the massively lucrative, idol-worshipping pilgrimage industry he profited from.
Part 2. Confrontation at Mount Safa.
So all this simmering tension, it inevitably boils over. Around 613 CE, following a divine command to warn his closest family members, the Prophet ﷺ actually climbed Mount Safa, and he called out Ya Sabaha. Now, that was a traditional high-alert alarm, usually meaning an enemy tribe was attacking right at dawn. Obviously, the Quraysh urgently rush out to gather. When they arrive, he asked them a simple question. If he told them a hidden army was waiting right behind the hill, would they believe him? And because he had an absolute, flawless reputation for honesty, they immediately said yes. Right then, he delivered this profound warning of a severe impending punishment.
But before anyone could even process what he just said, Abu Lahab stands right up, right in front of the entire assembly, and shouts, "May you perish for the rest of this day. Is this why you gathered us?" Actually, some historical traditions even mention he picked up a stone to throw. Think about the gravity of that for a second. In a society where family and clan loyalty literally meant everything, an uncle had just publicly cursed and utterly humiliated his own nephew.
Part 3. The Father of Flame.
Well, that stunning human confrontation was immediately met with the most incredible divine defense. The revelation of Surah Al-Masad came down swift and totally unyielding. Verse 1 plainly states, "May the hands of Abu Lahab be ruined, and ruined is he." Look at the direct linguistic mirror there. Abu Lahab had just yelled, "Tabban lak," basically, "may you perish," and the Quran takes his exact curse and turns it right back onto him with absolute undeniable authority. By focusing specifically on his hands, it's declaring that all his actions, his wealth, his power, the whole shebang would be completely brought to ruin.
And it goes right on in verses 2 and 3. His wealth will not avail him, or that which he gained, he will burn in a fire of blazing flame. This is just a brilliantly profound irony. The text literally takes his own proud nickname, Abu Lahab, the father of flame, and uses it to describe his eternal punishment. So his worldly, arrogant identity actually becomes the very instrument of his downfall. According to classical commentaries, Abu Lahab arrogantly boasted that, hey, if his nephew's warnings actually turned out to be true, he'd just buy his way out. He literally thought he could ransom himself with his massive wealth and his sons. But the divine reality here declares a total bankruptcy of that worldview. In the face of a divine decree, his bank accounts, his social standing, none of it matters. It is all rendered completely useless.
Part 4. The Carrier of Firewood.
Now, Abu Lahab definitely did not act alone. His partner in all this was his wife, Arwa bint Harb, who was widely known as Jamil. We are talking about a woman of incredibly high status here. She was a wealthy noblewoman and the sister of Abu Sufyan, the chief of Mecca. But she wasn't just sitting on the sidelines. She was an active, deeply enthusiastic participant in the persecution of the Prophet Muhammad.
And because of those malicious actions, the surah absolutely immortalizes her with a humiliating title. The text says, "And his wife, carrier of firewood, having on her neck a rope of twisted strands." You have to understand,
Publicly condemning a high-ranking noblewoman like this, it was incredibly shocking to the Meccan elite. It proved, without a doubt, that partnership in sin directly leads to a partnership in punishment, completely regardless of your social rank.
The crucial thing to grasp here is the powerful double meaning behind the phrase carrier of firewood. Historically speaking, sources tell us she literally carried thorny branches and scattered them along the dark paths where the Prophet ﷺ walked to pray, hoping to cut up his feet. But metaphorically, in Arabic idiom, a carrier of firewood is a talebearer. It's someone who runs around carrying malicious gossip and slander just to ignite the fires of hatred and social discord. And the truth is, she was guilty of both.
Then the verse wraps up by stating she will have a rope of twisted strands, or masad, around her neck. As this famously wealthy noblewoman, she was known around town for wearing this incredibly ostentatious, highly valuable jeweled necklace. A necklace she actually swore she would sell off just to fund her hostility against Islam. So the surah brilliantly contrasts her worldly elegance with a humiliating, rough halter of palm fiber. It's just a remarkably stark image of divine justice completely replacing worldly pride with eternal degradation.
Part 5. A Prophecy Fulfilled.
Okay, let's look at the historical aftermath here. 10. That is the exact number of years Abu Lahab lived after Surah Al-Masad was first revealed. For an entire decade, Muslims are actively reciting these verses, right to his face, predicting his total doom and boldly stating he would die a disbeliever. Think about it. If he had just professed faith, even falsely, just as a joke, he could have cast immense, crippling doubt on the Quran itself. But he didn't. His own stubborn arrogance kept him from doing it, perfectly and incredibly fulfilling the very prophecy made against him.
Fast forward a bit to 624 CE. The Quraysh suffer this absolute massive defeat at the Battle of Badr. Now, Abu Lahab didn't actually fight in it personally, but when he heard the news of the Muslims' victory, it enraged and completely devastated him. And a mere 7 days after receiving that crushing news, his ultimate demise finally arrived.
And his end? It was truly undeniably wretched. He was struck by Adasia, which was a severe, highly contagious disease, kind of like smallpox. And remember those sons and family members he boasted would always protect him? They completely abandoned him in absolute terror of catching the infection. His body was literally left to decompose in his own home for days. Eventually, just out of pure public shame, some hired laborers had to push his body into a pit from a distance using these long wooden poles, and then they just threw stones over it. Just exactly as verse 2 promised, his immense wealth and his children did absolutely nothing to avail him.
Part 6. The ultimate lesson.
So, bringing this entire historical narrative into our present reality, we have to realize something vital. The Quran didn't eternalize this specific man and woman just for the sake of recording history. It did it to present a timeless archetype. Bloodlines, incredibly prestigious family ties, massive bank accounts, none of that can override faith, character, and truth. Abu Lahab's story stands as this immortal monument to the catastrophic failure of arrogant defiance when it goes up against divine justice.
Which leads us to a really tough question. If the closest possible blood ties to a prophet and the absolute protection of vast, unimaginable wealth couldn't save Abu Lahab, what are we relying on to save us? Take a moment and really think about that, deeply. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer today, and as always, keep seeking knowledge.